So the thing about this one is that, oh my goodness, sometimes we've done fan casts of properties that have been done multiple times. We've done fan casts for things that have been cast in the last 20 years. We've even gone as bold recently as to fan cast like Beauty and the Beast, which is fan cast like 3 or 4 years ago. This is the first time, I believe, that we've ever fan cast something while it's being redone to be released again this next year. When's the Robert Pattinson one coming out? On top of that, it's only just been recast as him after very recently enough that the director's cut came out in February, been played by someone else. And Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale are pretty recent in everyone's minds. So this kind of feels ludicrous to do, and yet, unfortunately, you really can't rule out the idea of them needing another Batman fan cast. And to be fair, a lot of these characters might need cast again for the Robert Pattinson films and haven't yet been. So, nice and easy way to slip around that, sort of. But we're just going to go through. I've got a lot of them cast here. There's a lot of villains. There's a lot of Batman villains. There's a lot of Batman heroes and friends as well. And I'm just going to try and cast as many of them as I can without this becoming a 40-minute video. So let's jump right into it. Now, my thing was, I wanted to cast younger. I started out, my mission was to cast younger. Don't get me wrong, Robert Pattinson, I'm on board with giving him a shot at it. I'm interested to see how they go. And after watching him in things like Tenet recently and Devil All the Time, I'm back on board with him as an actor after obviously being turned off for years by Twilight. But my idea was to cast younger for Batman, because I thought if you're casting a 30-year-old Batman, you could actually get him playing the role for 20 plus years, which is realistically what DC need. Same way as Marvel are like, oh yeah, milk that Tom Holland Spider-Man money for the next couple of decades. But then I realised if I wanted to do a full Batman world fan cast, casting all of his villains, all of his friends, I was probably going to have to cast a little bit older so that you could actually feasibly cast all of the Robins. Yeah, because you need Dick Grayson to be significantly younger than Bruce Wayne. And then you need Red Hood and then Red Robin. If you're casting all of them, you kind of need quite a lot of increments in terms of age there to go by. So if I was casting 30-year-old Batman, I just couldn't have cast them all. So keep in mind that my original idea for Batman is my actual choice for Nightwing. My idea for Batman is Karl Urban. If they're not going to do it, if they're not going to do more Judge Dredd films with him, they should do Batman with him. Because Batman's such a serious role, such a brooding, serious role. And there are few actors who can pull that off properly. There is a point at which they all begin annoying you with their broodiness. All of them. Always happens. Except for Adam West. But he's a different kettle of fish. I want Karl Urban because he never annoyed me even a little bit as the incredible badass superhero Judge Dredd. Not even really a superhero, which is good, because neither is Batman, when you really think about it. He's this detective investigator, Judge Dredd's a cop. But they are both such legendary comic book characters. I am a huge, massive Judge Dredd fan in general. I've got to do a Judge Dredd fan cat. But Karl Urban, if he's not going to be playing Dredd, he should come back and do Batman, because he'd be so perfect for it. And I think he'd do a really good Bruce Wayne as well, actually. Looking at him in things like Star Trek, I feel like he'd do a really good Bruce Wayne. But looking at him in things like The Boys and in Dredd, I think he'd do a really good Batman as well. Nightwing, then, and this is someone who I think could easily do Batman, okay? If they were casting a younger, properly younger version of the role. However, I think he could also easily do Nightwing. Dick Grayson, obviously, he starts out as a child, but he starts out as Robin. By the time he's Nightwing, he's at least a grown-up. We're going to at least say he'd be in his 20s. And I'm going to cast Taron Egerton, because, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. There are one of two things that's going to happen, and it's got to happen in the next couple of years. Okay, one of three things. Option one, they just go for the meme and cast Taron Egerton as the next James Bond. After his roles in Kingsman, he could totally do it, but because of his roles in Kingsman, it's super memey to cast him as James Bond. Option two, he wins an Oscar, because if he puts in another performance in another big film, of that caliber on the level of his performance in Rocketman, he can't be ignored. Option 3 is Marvel or DC come for him. And get him as a big franchise player in some form. I can't promise what form it'll take. There are a few Marvel roles I can think of. Nightwing is definitely... Even Nightwing 2, Robert Pattinson's Batman, could be feasible. Robert Pattinson's only about 7 years older than Taron Egerton, I think, if even. So it's kind of stretching it. If Karl Urban was Batman, it would be easy for Taron Egerton to do it. Or Taron Egerton could just be Batman. I'm behind either idea. But given his roles in Kingsman, where he's really shined the most outside of Rocketman, which can't really relate to any of these roles, I feel like the meminess and the swagger is more Nightwing fitting than it is Batman, to be fair. Red Hood, then, needs to be even younger. Now, Red Hood is Jason Todd, who was the Robin that came after Nightwing, so he does need to be younger. Maybe not all that much younger, but I really liked the idea, and I have gone quite a bit younger for it, of casting this anti-heroic little bastard as Tanner Buchanan, who I have cast a fair amount recently. Yeah, no, this is true. But his style, those, I keep saying it, but those dark characters he plays, that's kind of perfect for Red Hood, because he's just this really... He's just an edgemeister. He's just... he is just an anti-heroic character. He comes after Batman after being thought dead all this time and shenanigans. Winter Soldier. He's just the Winter Soldier for DC. Let's just... Yeah, oh, I can't swear as to which one came first, to be fair. But that's basically the situation. And then... Well, you can do Tim Drake as well. I'm not going to cast Damian Wayne. Fuck Damian Wayne. God. Never got into Damian Wayne as a character. But Tim Drake, or Red Robin, you can then actually cast a teenager. And I really wanted to cast Aidan Gallagher as an actual teenage Robin, because I feel like that's really perfect. I feel like that quippiness and meminess and just humorous action star can't be personified in a 16, 17-year-old more than it can by Aidan Gallagher. And he can play younger still. He can get away with playing a little bit younger, like 14. You can have a 14-year-old Tim Drake. And Aidan Gallagher would be fantastic at that. He'd be so good at that. The real talk-back kind of young sidekick role without getting overly annoying, because he does come off quite... At least in the Umbrella Academy, he comes off... Which is another superhero role, I know. But he comes off very mature, as he has to in that. But I feel like he'd do a very good job of bringing that kind of role to a film like this. Batgirl is different, because she's a girl. But... And she has more independence. No, that's true. You would normally, if you see... Not so much... You could see Nightwing getting his own comic series, but generally if you see a Robin in a series, it's with Batman. Batgirl much more often gets her own series. And she is a great character. Barbara Gordon, Cassie Lang, whichever one you want. If you are still casting them as a teenager, let's say they would... You know, Batgirl's going to get along better with the current Robin. So she can maybe be older than Aidan Gallagher, but not by a huge amount. I would say cast Sadie Sink, because a lot of the kids from Stranger Things get a lot of big movie roles nowadays, and Sadie Sink's been, for some reason, maybe slightly left behind. I haven't seen her in anything really outside of Stranger Things, and I feel like we should have by now. I feel like she's done enough in the last couple of seasons of Stranger Things to prove that she is also great. And she, again, has shown, as a child actor, this quippiness that... No, you might not like it if you're a DC fan. You might think that's Marvel shit. But outside of Batman, a lot of these characters would naturally move in a direction where they would be a lot more like that, a lot quippier. It's just a comic book style. Even in the world of Batman, that's still very prevalent in a lot of the characters. Alfred... At this stage, it's just kind of type into Google old British actors and cast the first one that comes up that isn't Gary Oldman, because he did Gordon and hasn't already played Alfred. I'm going to cast Hugh Laurie, because... Yes, he again is quite quippy and memey in a lot of his roles. Alfred does have something of that, but it comes out as sassier in a lot of portrayals of him. Hugh Laurie is just a legendary British actor. He's into his 60s now, which makes him pretty good in terms of age for the role. And Alfred just is a character. You want him to be secure. If you're casting these guys to stick around in the franchise for at least 15 years, You want to be secure in the knowledge that he's young enough that Hugh Laurie should be alive in 15 years. That's a factor to start thinking about there, unfortunately. Gordon is another legendary role. You've got a lot of great people who've played Gordon as well. And I like the idea of casting Kiefer Sutherland. And now that he's not as memey or funny in a lot of his roles, but Gordon doesn't have to be. Gordon is a more serious character. He, like Batman, likes to brood in a lot of the incarnations of the character. And Kiefer Sutherland is great. He's done a lot of these roles, the law enforcement type roles, which make you believe that he could really pull off that really well. Actually, I really love that casting. Particularly, I don't know why, it just seems to fit so perfectly. Lucius Fox is another friend of Batman. He's just another friend of Batman. He was never that hugely important a character in the comics that I'd seen until Morgan Freeman played him. And now he's kind of legendary and you need to make sure you're casting him properly. So I'm going to cast Denzel Washington. Denzel's just another incredible actor who would have fun with the role. Morgan Freeman certainly had a lot of fun with the role, and I feel like he would do the same. That's just all you're looking for here. A lot of these characters, they're never going to have a huge amount of screen time if you're filling up the world with this many characters. But he is the kind of person who you just see turning up, steal a few scenes. That's all you need from him, really. Catwoman, and now we're heading more in the direction of the Rogues Gallery, but Catwoman is more primarily these days an anti-heroic love interest for Batman as much as anything else. And I'm not going to go into too many of Batman's love interests because who gives a shit. But he never finds happiness. But that's another interesting role because I do love the idea of Zoe Kravitz playing the character, and I'm really excited to see her playing it. I hope that if it does work out for Robert Pattinson, I hope that they extend this world and give a proper Catwoman film to Zoe Kravitz. However, if you were casting somebody else, I'd like to see Sofia Boutella play the role, because she's done a few pretty major blockbuster action roles, kicked a lot of ass, seemed super cool, and hasn't gotten that actual leading role yet. And I feel like it's coming to her. And I feel like as Catwoman, you really get a chance to shine. Look, Zoe Kravitz. She's not been the leading star of many major blockbuster films. But you could cast her in this kind of role and then see if she could work out in her own spin-off, for sure. And Sofia Boutella is on a similar level, I feel. Except she's probably got more action experience than Zoe Kravitz. I think so. Batwoman is a weird role. I was always a Batgirl fan. I never particularly got behind Batwoman as a character. I haven't really tried the CW series, but I'd be interested to. I'd be interested to see. I guess the CW series is just their way of doing a Batman series, but with a woman. I don't think that's exactly what she's like in the comics, but it would be interesting to see what they could do with it. And it's another case where you think, okay, somebody who's not necessarily led all that many big action films, but really should be doing more. And I'm just going to cast Karen Gillan, who literally has got her first, I think it's fair to say, outright leading role in a big action film with Gunpowder Milkshake coming up. But she's already done Nebula in a bunch of Marvel movies. She's already done Jumanji. She's been around a lot. And I feel like she would, again, be someone who you could put in there. She'd steal a few scenes. Not going to be any left for Karl Urban, that's right. But then you would just be able to see if people react well to that incarnation of the character. Because you can never tell. The star of various incarnations of Batman films, it's usually not Batman as a character himself. Heath Ledger's Joker, for instance. Michael Keaton's Alfred. These became like huge breakout characters everyone loved. And it would be different with each new incarnation of the characters. Obviously, we didn't really get a chance for Ben Affleck's side characters to really shine at all, but yeah. Robert Pattinson's, we'll just see who works out and who doesn't. In terms of the actual Rogues Gallery, then, we kind of need to fire through this a bit, because there are quite a lot of them I wanted to cast here. Let's start with the Riddler. Now, Paul Dano is going to be a great Riddler. I have no doubt about this. If you wanted to go another way, and I almost cast Neil Patrick Harris, but it's too memey, and it's too over fan cast. It's kind of like John Krasinski and Emily Blunt as Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. I didn't cast them in my Fantastic Four fan cast, even though I know they'd be good, because everyone knows that those are, they could do it. So I wanted to do something else. Here I wanted to do something else again. And I'm casting Andrew Scott because, oh my god, Moriarty, his version of Moriarty in the Sherlock series is so good and so intense. And it's got a really interesting charisma to it. And he always brings that with him to any role. If he was doing the Riddler, it would be bloody good. Oh, it would be really fun. Black Mask is not probably a character you'll ever really see leading the charge as a villain in a Batman film. But if you introduce him into the world, he could become a much more major character in a Nightwing film, a Batgirl film, a Batwoman film, a Catwoman film. You see what I mean? A lot of these we're introducing, I'm not expecting most of these to actually be the lead in a Batman film. But, you know, and in terms of Black Mask, Ewan McGregor, look, I love Ewan McGregor. I didn't love the incarnation of Black Mask they did with him in Birds of Prey. I didn't love Birds of Prey. It just annoyed me. There were a lot of things about it that annoyed me. Which was unfortunate because I wanted to like it. But Jake Gyllenhaal is another person who could do a really interesting version of Black Mask. Having seen him as Mysterio, I feel like he could do such a good villain for DC. So this is done one for Marvel now, you know, and it may as well move on. And I think Black Mask is the kind of role that if you got him in for it, it would become a big deal as the main villain in a film that perhaps is a Nightwing spinoff or a Batgirl spinoff or whatever. You know what I mean? Bane. Whew, wow. Tom Hardy as Bane is a divisive figure, I think, in terms of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy lore. I'm casting this Bane thinking about the comic accuracy, thinking about this huge hulked out CGI villain. And if you're doing that, then it's okay to cast older, like Javier Bardem, because then the voice becomes the most important aspect of what the actor is giving the role, and it's just a big CGI guy. And I think Javier Bardem would do a damn interesting version of that for sure, right? That'd be crazy. Penguin is another one. Colin Farrell. Bold choice. If I was casting Penguin, I probably wouldn't have gone there. I'm interested to give him a chance. I don't like the idea of just going, oh, he couldn't play that role. Because how the fuck do you know? But if I was casting Penguin, I think I would have gone for Toby Jones. Yeah. I think he would give an outright, if not quite as memey and hilarious as Danny DeVito in Batman Returns, he would give it the gravitas of the small man complex, like the proper, like, angry kind of guy that you'd be looking for in Penguin. Maybe Colin Farrell will do that as well, but it looks like it's going a bit different with that role. I'm not sure entirely. Poison Ivy. I'll be honest. I was going to cast Poison Ivy a little bit older, in her 30s, but then I thought, no, because I kind of, I'll explain later, but the age I'm casting Harley Quinn is fairly young. So I liked the idea of casting Poison Ivy around the same age in case they wanted to do the thing they've been doing recently in comics and the Harley Quinn animated series where they're a couple. Yeah, just down the line, that would be really, really cool because that's so good. They're so good together in the animated series in particular. I haven't read even many of the Harley Quinn comics recently, but the animated series, they're brilliant. So I'm going to cast Madeline Petch as Poison Ivy. And don't get me wrong, I hate casting people from Riverdale. I make it a point to not do it as often as I possibly can. But Madeline Petch just kind of screams Poison Ivy. If you're casting for around this age, sure, there are people in their 30s, a few red-headed actresses that I thought could definitely do it. But when I decided I was casting younger, Madeline Petch was the only real option for me. I think she is a fantastic choice. I think she'd be great at that role. Harley Quinn, then, I am also casting quite young. And this is the one place, well, at least the one place, there might be more than one here, where I've gone super memey. Because people compare Emma Mackey to Margot Robbie all the time. And she hasn't broken out into films hugely yet, though she is in Death on the Nile, coming out eventually in October. And I'm really excited to see her in that. But in Sex Education, she's fantastic. She's got a really interesting style that really provokes thoughts of Harley Quinn in my head. And she does look a lot like Margot Robbie, who is like a perfect Harley Quinn. So if I'm recasting the role, I think Emma Mackey would be great at it. And she's young. And that's good, because Harley Quinn's the kind of character who easily could break out if you introduce her as a side character in Batman. She could easily turn into, oh, suddenly we need like a whole Harley Quinn trilogy. So it'd be good if she's only about 30 by the time they're starting that trilogy, you know what I mean? What else? Ra's al Ghul? Sure. Daniel Day Kim. Yep. Into his 50s, but still so good at doing action scenes. Still just got a lot of gravitas and power that he brings with him into every role. And I think he'd be a great villain. And Ra's al Ghul, you want something updated and a little bit different for him. And I feel like he'd be really good for it. The good thing about casting Talia al Ghul, then, is that you can cast her in her, like, 30s, and that's not a problem, despite Ra's being cast in his 50s, because he's, like, got eternal life and shit. And for all we know, maybe she's taken some of that already, too. We don't know how old she is. I don't know. I'm casting Gemma Chan, though. That is Mimi, because she's in the Eternals as an immortal person. But I feel like if she was doing a DC role, she'd be perfect for Talia al Ghul. I think she'd be so good at that. I think the not quite heroic character, again, is something she could play really well there. And I think, God, I would love to see her at that. I love Gemma Chan. I'm so excited for the Eternals. Two-Face is... yeah, another one that it's kind of actually, as iconic as Two-Face is, it is kind of hard to see him being the lead villain in a big Batman movie for me. As a character, I don't see it. As a side villain, like he worked in The Dark Knight, I think it works very well. As an actual main villain in a big blockbuster Batman film, I don't get it. I've never thought of Two-Face all that highly as a villain. Aaron Eckhart did a good job. You know who else would good? A good job is John Hamm. Look at John Hamm in, like, Baby Driver. He's so nice most of the film, and then it just unleashes the psychopath near the end. This is just Two-Face. And he looks like he could be very corporate. He's the star of Mad Men. Of course he does. Hugo Strange is not a role that I see particularly coming up quickly in a Batman mythology, but he could. And Bryan Cranston would be great at him. Yep. Nope, there's nothing more to that. Clayface is interesting. I don't know how to cast Clayface. You know there's been about 9 Clayfaces in the comics, 9 different people that have taken on the mantle. One of them was just called Clayface of Japan or something like that, but there are like 8. There's Clayface 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I just have it in my head that Clayface is just like an actor. In a lot of incarnations, it's just this actor who takes these roles on and is very, like, quite snooty about it, really, despite being made of clay. I wanted to cast Benedict Cumberbatch because I thought that would be Mimi. Another Marvel DC crossover, but I mean, Marvel have got them all, guys. They've got all the actors. You need to just use some of them. And it's not a particularly hard one. It's kind of like Vin Diesel doing Groot, or even just like Rocket. Bradley Cooper doing Rocket. It's not a taxing one for him to do, and then he can go back to doing Doctor Strange things. Mr. Freeze is kind of difficult. I didn't know what age to cast Mr. Freeze. You probably should be casting him older than I'm doing, but he's lost his wife. Why can't you be in your 30s and have lost your wife? And I liked the idea of Nicholas Hoult playing the role. Really liked the idea of Nicholas Hoult playing the role. I think he did so well in Those Who Wish Me Dead as this villainous character, but quite a straightforward, like, not like, nah, I'm so evil villainous character, like a government agent guy who's just kind of, oh, well, alright, let's go kill these people. And I feel like he's actually a really good villainous character, and that loss of the wife driving him, that's a very interesting one. I could see him as Mr. Freeze being, like, quite a main villain in one of these films. Scarecrow is another role. Oh, Cillian Murphy is good. He did that role well. Not the outright real lead, but the one we see most screen time of in Batman Begins, realistically. Interesting. I'd like to see Rami Malek do it. Yeah, that just feels right, doesn't it? Wow. Victor Zsasz is just a crazy batshit serial killer, so it's kind of easy to cast somebody like Walter Goggins, who looks like a batshit crazy serial killer. That's just... yeah. And again, that's the kind of person that you could see someone on a smaller scale tackling with a lot throughout a film, Batgirl or Batwoman, because he is quite a well-known film from the comics, but not one that you would probably use as an outright lead villain in a Batman film, honestly. And finally, you can't do it. I don't think there is an actor on the planet that you can cast as the Joker, and it's not hugely divisive. You can't do it. Jared Leto, who had played crazy roles in the past, cast, and everyone was like, no, that's stupid. And on paper, he should have been good. He wasn't. Heath Ledger. Internet wasn't as big a thing in 2006 when he was cast, but again, it's the same thing. People don't believe that you can play the Joker until you've played the Joker. There is no, or hardly any, way to prove you would be good at playing the Joker unless you've done exactly that role. And there's every chance if they're just doing Robert Pattinson ones that they will use Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. It's in an alternate timeline or whatever they're doing now. I want to cast Donald Glover as the Joker. I do. I feel like there is a mixture there in his history of comedy, of serious, really good acting, and of this darkness, which is maybe shown more in like his music. But I feel like he's got that there. And I feel like you need to have a comedic background. Or I wanted people to have a comedic background for this. Because you look at Joaquin Phoenix, that was an outright like terrifying mental health film. Because Joaquin Phoenix isn't really a comedic actor as much. He comes off very serious. Heath Ledger had a lot of comedic background going into that. And that helped him become this proper clown prince of crime. Like, the Joker is he's not serious. He is actually laughing and like maniacally like So I liked the idea of Donald Glover, who's got that comedic experience, that maybe just darkness lurking beneath the surface. And I feel like he could win Oscars. I feel like Donald Glover in the right role could win Oscars. I don't feel like he's had the role yet, but I feel like it's there, and I'd love to see it. And I would love to see all of that. My God, that was a lot. Wow. And that's all for this one, guys. God, we've done a lot of long fan casting videos recently. We really have. But go ahead and let me know in the comments what you want to see next. Is there other DC or Marvel ones to do? Yes. Yeah, of course there is. We've hardly done any DC ones. There are a lot to do. Let me know and subscribe so you don't miss any more.